Cooking doesn't have to be difficult. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it too. Welcome to Cooking with Cimoooooooo. So for today's episode of Cooking with Cimoooooooo, we are going to be cooking one of my absolute favorite dishes, and that is steaks. Now specifically, I like the filet mignon cut. Obviously, this is up for debate as to what the best cut is. Some people like filet, some people like ribeye. There's many different choices, but the way I'm going to be teaching you how to cook filet today is super simple, and you can cook it at home yourself. So you're going to need a few ingredients. Obviously, you're going to need the steak. We're going to be making a nice little garlic butter to go alongside this, so we have some garlic over here. We also have some rosemary and some thyme. You're gonna need a few spices as well, like salt, pepper, as well as garlic powder. And that's basically it. Some butter as well, and you're all set to go to make a delicious steak. Now, the way that I like to cook steak, the thicker the better, just because of the way the cooking process works. You're gonna sear the outsides to get a nice little crust on it. And then once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and throw it in the oven after being on the stove for a few minutes. So let's go ahead and get to it. So first up, we have our two little fillets here. These are grass-fed fillets, and we're going to go ahead and just give them a nice little seasoning of salt and pepper. Want to make sure we're nice and generous with that. I also like to use a little bit of garlic powder as well. I feel like you could use garlic in the actual cooking process if you prefer, but I like the crust that it adds when we get to sear the steak. So let's go ahead and flip these over. And you want to make sure you get both sides just because it's extra flavor for the steak. One thing I forgot to mention as well is that before we actually started recording here, we let the steak sit out from the fridge for about 30 minutes. You want to do that because if the steak goes into the pan too cold, it's going to cook unevenly, and you might have it cooked on the outside, but then the inside will be completely raw. So that's all ready to go. We're going to go ahead and go on over here to our pan back here. We want to make sure that this is nice and hot. Now, I'm using a cast iron skillet for this. You can use any regular pan, but you want to make sure that you feel the heat emanating from this when you're holding your hand over it. If you're not feeling the heat, then it's not ready to put the steak in yet. We want to throw in a little knob of butter before we get going. And if you see the butter smoking like that, then you know it is ready. So once that melts, we're going to go ahead and throw in our fillets here. And that's the sound you want to hear. If you do not hear the sizzle when you put the steak in, the pan is not hot enough. So we're gonna throw those in just like that. We're actually gonna cover these just because my wife will kill me if I make a mess in the kitchen. And it's also good for just retaining the heat as well. So we're gonna cook these for 2 minutes on each side. That's gonna be enough time for it to sear both sides. And then after that's finished, we're gonna go ahead and throw it in the oven for a little bit more time as well. Depending on your doneness that you like for your steak, that's what you're gonna wanna look for. So we're gonna go ahead and work on our butter. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is actually get our garlic taken care of here. If you've never dealt with garlic before, if you have it just the close like this, make sure you have the pointy side of the knife pointing away from you and just bash it down. That'll get the shell off of the garlic nice and easily, and you can just peel it off just like that. So you can see right here, this one came off almost immediately. Sometimes you're still gonna have to take a little bit of work to be able to get it off, but it's way easier than just peeling it yourself. All right, and I'm gonna introduce you all to our friend Gracula here. Now, Gracula is our nice little garlic mashing tool here. You can chop this up if you want, and that's what all the professionals will do, but Gracula is a godsend because you just chuck all your garlic in, you spin his head around a few times, and then your garlic is all nice and mashed, and it's a lot less work for you to do in the long run. We're gonna put Gracula down for a second here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our steaks because I think they're just about ready to be flipped. Grab a pair of tongs here. You can see immediately the color difference just from when we put those in. And that's the crust we're looking for. Look at that color right there. That's exactly what we want to see. Garlic is all done. You can see here that it was nice and easy to mash that up for us. We didn't have to use our knife whatsoever, aside from actually hitting the side of the garlic to get it out. We're gonna go ahead and take our little handy dandy bowl here. And the little trick too is that with the butter, if you need to get it to room temperature, just put it next to your pan and then the residual heat will actually melt it for you. So we're gonna take about half of this. I'm gonna make a nice generous portion for both my wife and I later because when we make steaks multiple times, it's very easy to just grab this later out of the fridge. You don't have to make it every single time you do. We've got some thyme and we have some rosemary to go in our herb butter today. Sometimes we use like tarragon or other things as well, but that's what we decided to go with this time. Nice little trick for thyme is that if you grab the bottom of the stem and you pull upward, you can usually get everything off, and then the twig is just the leftover waste that you get to throw away. Comes off super easy. We are gonna have to do a little bit of chopping, unfortunately, and you could just do that with the garlic, but this trick also sort of works with the rosemary as well. It's a little bit more difficult. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think I might need to go the opposite direction. I always forget which way to go. We'll get the rosemary in there. Rosemary is super easy. You just pick it off. Comes off pretty nicely. Let's try going the other way. Is that the trick? Oh, that's the trick. There we go. See, we're learning together, everyone. Go take it from the opposite direction, and it just comes right off. Let's go ahead and check our steaks here. They're looking pretty good. So what we're gonna wanna do now is we're gonna go ahead and take these, open up our nice oven that we heated up to 425 degrees. We're gonna throw the steaks in there. We're gonna wanna keep them in there for about 4 minutes to get to a nice medium rare. That's how I personally like my steak. If you like yours a little bit more on the rare side, then you can go ahead and leave it in for less time. But if you like a little bit more well done, then you can go ahead and put it in for a little bit longer. You don't wanna go too long, maybe like 5 minutes, 6 at the absolute max, but then it might just taste like leather, so I wouldn't recommend it. So with our herbs, we're just gonna go ahead and just get it all bundled up in one nice big pile. And we wanna try to chop it up as finely as we can. We don't wanna just get giant bits of rosemary in our steak. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you just want to have a nice smooth flavor with the butter. Nice trick to this is just to put your hand on the top of the knife and just move the bottom back and forth. Just rock it. And for the most part, that should get everything that you need until you have some herbs. So we're gonna get our butter back here. We can take our garlic from the Garacula. We can go ahead and just pick that out with our handy knife here. There we go. And then we're just gonna go ahead and pick up all of our herbs here and just dump those right in. We're using unsalted butter, so I'm gonna put just a little bit of salt and pepper in here just for a little bit of extra flavor. If you're using salted butter, I wouldn't recommend it because then it might just get too salty. And we're just gonna go ahead and mash this up until everything is nice and mixed. It's already pretty... I didn't want it to be too melted because I still want it to be formed for when we put it on top of the steak at the end, but I also didn't want it to be too hard that it wasn't malleable to be able to mix it up. So as you can see, it's starting to all mix together here. And a small batch like this, I just used, half a stick of butter. I used 4 cloves of garlic. My wife and I love garlic, so we put a little bit more than maybe most people might. And just some herbs. This will last us maybe, 3-4 times if we have steak. But the nice thing is you could use this for multiple things. If you make eggs, you could use this for your eggs. That would be delicious. And what I like to do is we have these little jars that we sometimes get from when we buy jam at the store. So it's a nice little way to store it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and very carefully here, put that in there. And there we go. So then overnight, we'll be able to throw this in the fridge. It'll actually solidify so then it resembles hardened butter. And then you can use it for whatever you want. This nice little jar has a lid, so we can just put that on there. We're gonna grab ourselves a few plates. My wife and I like to eat our steak with rice, but you can have it with potatoes. You can have it with realistically anything. I mean, it's steak at the end of the day. Are you really gonna complain? So grab ourselves a nice healthy portion of rice. And look at that, our steak is finished. Right on time. You know we're gonna grab the cam for this one. A little bit smoky when we get in there. But as you can see, look at that. Nice little crust on the outside. Inside should be a beautiful medium rare. And one thing you want to do with the steak too is let it rest a bit. You don't want to go immediately into it. You can see this one's actually a little bit open, but we'll probably just cut into it anyway just so you can see the doneness on it. But you want the steak to rest because then the juices can retract back inside of it and it's going to finish cooking because of the heat that it's been exposed to. So it finishes the cooking process just by having it rest for a few minutes. But we'll go ahead and carve one of these open so that way you guys can see what we got going on. This one kind of already cut itself open, so I figure we'll just go with this. And look at that. Beautiful medium rare, rare going on medium rare there. That's one of the best temperatures you could possibly ask for. If we let it rest for a bit, it would get a little more pink and a little less red in the center there, but we of course need to finish it with our garlic butter, which takes it to a completely different level. Just get in there with your fork. And you can throw it on top just like that, and the heat that's coming off of the steak will just naturally melt this butter, and it will ooze into a mountain of deliciousness. And there you go. That's how you cook steak with Cimoooooooo. I really hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of Cooking with Cimoooooooo. If you did, be sure to hit the like button, be sure to subscribe, and we will see you next time.